All right, so I do work for ABR Inc. I'm the president and director of research here, also an owner, and we are a for-profit environmental consulting firm. We really focus on research. We do permitting support to a certain extent, but we really stick more to collecting baseline data, monitoring long-term rehabilitation plans, wetland delineations, things like that. So it's so we've been here in Fairbanks since 1976. We also have an office in Anchorage. And we'll get to the tie to Howie in just a moment, but we do work with a diversity of clients. We work with plenty of government organizations, Park Service, BLM, a lot of Department of Interior agencies, Fish and Wildlife Service. We also work quite a bit with DOT. And then we work with the private sector with oil and gas and mining, timber, renewable energy, non-renewable energy. So we have a pretty wide variety of folks that we get to collaborate with and work for. And the company as a whole is really dedicated to the triple bottom line. So using our profits as a way to promote social responsibility to the community that we live in, and environmental stewardship. We were so excited when our wall of solar went up 3 years ago. So we used to not be able to find my office because we're tucked away in these two little houses in the woods. And then the wall of solar went up, and now you can find ABR pretty easily that way. We have a range of services from marine sciences to terrestrial sciences, fisheries and aquatics, lots of GIS and statistics. So we've got a couple of contracts with NASA for number crunching and a couple other organizations, vegetation, landscape, ecology, and then we kind of walked our way into app design and programming, mostly to collect our own data, but then we've been doing that for clients as well. And this is where the Howie tie comes in. We've been doing ecological land survey program for a long time. That started in the mid-90s, and it's one of the services that we've developed collaboratively with the Fish and Wildlife Service. We have mapped more of Alaska than probably anybody else. We've mapped all of the, just about all the Fish and Wildlife Service lands to vegetation classes. And that was started by Tor Jorgensen, and he has since retired. And in the meantime, JJ, the long, tall drink of water there in the maroon shirt, started as a technician at ABR. And then went and got his PhD with Howie at UVA and came back to ABR. And now he and Matt McAnder together are running the program. JJ is a wonderful vegetation ecologist, botanist, annoying birder. He just loves looking at birds. But his heart is really in permafrost research and landscape change down at the field level. And he's also incredibly personable. So he's worked a lot with folks in Western Alaska. We've got a couple projects out there looking at long-term landscape change, incorporating traditional knowledge into evaluating changes in the landscape and developing community resilience strategies. And then Matt McAnder, who's standing next to him in the blue shirt, is just a computational whiz, and he's a geographer by training, takes a lot of remote sensing data and is very efficient at processing imagery and turning it into landscape change story. So the two of them together have really helped develop our mapping programs so that we can do vast areas efficiently and then actually get down on the ground for more fine scale mapping and information. So that was a big transition this year, having these guys step up into the lead of that program. Tor retired. Aaron Wells led the program for a while. He's since left ABR, and Matt and JJ have stepped into this leadership role that we're really excited about. This is just a brief overview of the kinds of projects that we did this year. We support the Bureau of Land Management in their assessment, inventory, and monitoring programs. So these are nationwide programs that they've implemented pretty successfully in the lower 48, but Alaska is special and different. And so the protocols that they would like strictly followed don't always apply as well up here. So it's been a privilege to help them figure out how different Alaska is and how we can collect data that are comparable to the lower 48, but also account for how different things are up here. So we are putting out field crews for both the aquatic, which you see the bottom there, and the terrestrial. So JJ's leading the terrestrial group up top. John Siegel and Caitlin Forster lead the aquatics team down at the bottom, and they just get to travel all over Alaska and collect data for this program that then is publicly available through the BLM. And then in the middle there is our King Eider study in the oil fields of ConocoPhillips. So we're doing pre, during, and post-construction surveys for King Eiders and looking at reproductive success and how development may or may not be influencing that. I had the privilege of working with the Fish and Wildlife Service and taking their 5 years of data and distilling them into reports for the Bureau of Ocean Energy Management. So we had 2 series of reports that have generated 3 peer-reviewed articles so far, with a couple more in the works. So it's always nice for me to keep a toe in science that way. We've developed some story maps. Again, you see JJ's name in there. Story maps together with UAF to look at landscape change both in the Arctic and in Hawaii. So that's exciting. We do work outside of Alaska from time to time. And then working with the US Geological Survey for aerial photo surveys of geese. And this is a combination of technology and biology, so that we're taking aerial photos and trying to keep track of the story of the expanding snow goose populations across the North Slope and what that may mean for other goose populations, other wildlife populations, and trying to come up with an efficient way to monitor these goose populations from summer to summer. So it's been traditionally done with people flying in airplanes, which has all kinds of carbon footprint consequences and risks that we're hoping we can decrease using more automation to get the job done. So that's just a brief overview of some of our projects. We did over 80 projects this year, and that's pretty typical of a year for us. Some of them are big, some of them are small, but that's how we stay busy. And then we crank out publications, which is pretty important part of what we do too. It's not a huge part of our time, but it's certainly our goal to get at least 3 to 5 publications out per year, because we're in a unique position to take data that are collected by the private sector and make them available to the public with permission from our clients. So we really try to do that. And because we do the same kinds of projects for groups of clients over years, we're again in a unique position to take data that are collected by, with funding from several different clients, but using one same methodology so that we can develop a story. So that first paper there, the behavior of Hawaiian petrels and Newell shearwaters around electrical transmission lines in Kauai, that was funded mostly by Kauai Island Electric Utility. And with their permission, we were able to use those data and provide some pretty important information about how birds behave, which then leads to conservation decisions and helps support conservation decisions by making that information available to folks. Down at the bottom there, you see a publication led by Matt McAnder on changes in plant functional types across Alaska and the Yukon. So that's another example of the kinds of publications that we produce. And there in the middle, there's my work with seabirds. We also work collaboratively with the Alaska Department of Fish and Game and ConocoPhillips and Hilcorp, a lot of the oil companies across the North Slope, to put collars on caribou and then manage those data. So this is a public-private partnership where we're the independent third party that helps collect the data coming from the collars and then serve them out to the management agency, which in this case is the Alaska Department of Fish and Game. So we get a lot of information about how caribou move through the landscapes with and without infrastructure, and how infrastructure may be affecting where those herds move. And we're the broker in between with those data. And so we have the expertise to help Fish and Game with their management decisions, and then make those data available as needed without actually providing the raw data directly back to any particular user group, unless the Department of Fish and Game agrees. And then we're able to put out these publications that are done collaboratively with folks at the agencies. Also looking at yellow-billed loons, that one's really exciting. And that's the story of how Red foxes are kind of moving up into the Arctic and what effects they may have. Arctic foxes are the ones that are typical across the North Slope. They're little, they are predators, but they have a hard time going up against yellow-billed loons. Arctic foxes, which are they're red foxes, which are bigger, a little more aggressive, may have different consequences if their entry into the Arctic is facilitated by people and their structures and their behaviors. So looking at the consequences of development across the Arctic, that's another thing we're in a privileged position to do. So that is EBR's year in a nutshell and a little bit about what we do.